Pause here for a moment because what happened last night was not as ordinary as it looked. Your person tried to fight their feelings. They tried to silence your name inside their chest. They tried to convince themselves that missing you was weakness. That thinking of you was a mistake, that the pull they felt toward you was something they could control if they stayed busy enough, cold enough, distracted enough. But heaven saw what they hid from everyone else. Last night, when the world became quiet and there was no noise left to protect them from their own heart, something inside them broke open. They were not expecting it. They thought they had buried the truth deeper than this. They thought they had trained themselves not to feel so much. They thought distance would make the bond fade, that silence would turn your memory into something small, something manageable, something they could walk around without being wounded by it. But your energy returned, not loudly, not dramatically, not in a way they could explain to anyone. It came like a whisper through the room. It touched the place inside them they pretend does not exist. And suddenly, they could not run. They sat there surrounded by everything familiar. Yet nothing felt familiar anymore. Their phone was near them. Their thoughts were restless. Their body was still, but their spirit was pacing back and forth like something urgent was trying to find a door. And then your face crossed their mind. Not just your face as the world sees you. The real you. The version of you that once looked at them with hope. The version of you that gave more than you admitted. The version of you that stayed patient even when you were tired. The version of you that made their soul feel seen in a way they were not prepared to receive. They tried to push it away. But the more they resisted, the stronger it became. That is when heaven leaned closer. Because sometimes, my child, a person can ignore messages, signs, dreams, songs, conversations, memories, and even their own tears. But they cannot ignore the moment their soul becomes louder than their pride. And last night, their soul became loud. There was a moment, quiet and hidden, when they almost reached for you. Their hand moved before their mind could stop it. Their heart moved before their fear could speak. Something in them wanted to send a message, to say one small thing, to break the silence with a word that carried more meaning than it seemed. But then fear stepped in. Fear reminded them of everything they had done wrong. Fear reminded them of the time wasted, the distance created, the words left unsaid, the way they acted like they did not care when caring was the very thing destroying their peace. So they stopped. But stopping did not save them. Because the moment they pulled back from reaching out, they felt the weight of what they had been avoiding. They realized this was not just attraction. This was not just curiosity. This was not just a passing emotion from a lonely night. This was something deeper. Something that had waited beneath their excuses. Something that had been breathing quietly under their denial. Something heaven had allowed to remain because some connections are not erased by distance. They are revealed by it. They remembered a moment with you. A small moment. Maybe one the world would not understand. Maybe one you did not know mattered. Maybe one you thought they forgot, but they did not forget. It returned to them last night like a light under a closed door. And when it came back, they felt the difference between the people who only touched their life and the one who touched their soul. That difference was you. They could compare, distract, pretend, smile around others, keep their routine, act strong, act careless, act untouched. But when the night became honest, your presence stood there. And this is what shook them most. They realized they had been fighting the wrong thing. They thought they were fighting feelings for you. But they were actually fighting the part of themselves that became real around you. The softer part, the honest part, the part that wanted to stop performing and finally be understood. They tried to bury that part because it scared them. Being close to you meant they could not hide behind shallow things anymore. Your energy reached places in them they usually keep locked. Your presence exposed what they wanted, what they feared, what they lacked, and what they were not brave enough to ask for. So they ran from you. But last night they understood something they were not ready to admit. Running from you did not free them. It only trapped them inside a life where your absence kept speaking, and then something happened that changed the atmosphere around them. They heard something, not necessarily with their ears, with their spirit. It was like a sentence appeared inside them without warning, a truth, a knowing, a pressure, a quiet message that said, "You cannot keep pretending this person meant nothing." And that one truth pierced through every wall they had built. They may have tried to laugh it off. They may have stood up, walked around, checked their phone, looked at old messages, opened something, and closed it again. They may have told themselves, "No, not tonight. I am not doing this." But their chest did not believe them. Their chest knew. Their soul knew. And heaven knew. There are moments, my child, when divine timing does not arrive like thunder. It arrives like discomfort. It arrives like a restless heart. It arrives like a memory that will not leave. It arrives like a name repeating in someone's mind until they finally understand that the name is not the problem. The resistance is your person tried to resist, but last night the resistance weakened. They began to see your absence not as distance, but as a mirror showing them what they failed to value while it was near. They remembered how your energy felt, how your presence softened rooms, how your attention made them feel important without needing to perform, how your silence now feels heavier than your words ever did. And this is where the night became dangerous for their pride, because they began asking questions they had avoided. What if I made it worse than it needed to be? What if they cared more than I understood? What if I pushed away the one person who actually saw me? What if this feeling is not leaving because it is trying to teach me something? They did not say these questions aloud, but heaven heard them. And when heaven hears the questions, a guarded heart is afraid to speak. Movement begins in the unseen. That is why you may have felt strange energy last night or today. A sudden heaviness, a random thought of them, a pull in your heart, a dreamlike feeling, a moment where your spirit became quiet as if something was happening behind the veil. Because something was, their energy turned toward you. Even if their body stayed still, even if their message did not come, even if their pride held the door closed, their spirit looked for you. And the soul always moves before the person does. Remember this. Before someone returns in words, they often return in energy. Before they apologize with their mouth, they often tremble with truth in private. Before they choose you openly, they often lose peace silently. And last night, their peace began to leave them, not as punishment, as awakening. Because heaven does not awaken someone by flattering their denial. Heaven awakens them by making the truth impossible to ignore. They tried to distract themselves, but every distraction carried your shadow. A song felt personal. A message reminded them of something. A quiet room felt too full. A simple memory became a storm. And then there was one moment when they closed their eyes and instead of rest, they saw what they had been avoiding. They saw the way you once cared. They saw the warmth they did not fully receive. They saw the patience they mistook for weakness. They saw the love they thought would always wait. And something inside them whispered, "What if it doesn't?" That question changed the night because for the first time they did not just feel your absence. They feared losing access to your heart forever. Not losing control, not losing attention, not losing comfort, losing you. There is a difference. And that difference entered them like a divine arrow. They could not explain why their mood shifted. They could not explain why their thoughts became emotional. They could not explain why your name felt so close even though you were not there. But I will tell you what they could not explain. Their heart reached a point where pretending became more painful than feeling. And when a person reaches that point, the old version of them begins to crack. This does not mean they instantly become brave. It means heaven has started removing the comfort from their hiding place. It means the excuses that once protected them now feel heavy. It means the silence that once made them feel in control now makes them feel alone. It means the door they kept closed is beginning to glow from the other side. They know something has to change. They may not know how. They may still be afraid. They may still be wrestling with pride, timing, guilt, and uncertainty, but they know. And that knowing is the beginning. Last night, they were shown a truth about you that they had minimized before. They were shown that you were not just someone who entered their life. You were a divine interruption. You interrupted their patterns. You interrupted their emotional numbness. You interrupted their belief that they could keep receiving love without becoming accountable to it. You interrupted the version of them that thought avoiding vulnerability was strength. And this is why they fought the feeling so hard, because loving you, truly feeling you, meant they would have to become someone more honest. And honesty is terrifying to a heart that has survived by hiding. But heaven is patient. Heaven does not force the flower to open by tearing it apart. Heaven changes the light around it until opening becomes natural. And last night the light changed. Something in their atmosphere shifted. They may have looked at your picture. They may have searched your name. They may have checked something connected to you. They may have replayed a conversation. They may have hovered near a message thread. They may have wondered if you still think about them. They may have felt foolish for caring so much after acting like they did not. But beneath all of that, there was a deeper movement. Their spirit was confessing before their ego could. And the confession was this: I still feel them. Not I remember them. Not I wonder about them. Not I miss the attention. I still feel them. That is not a small thing because feelings can be ignored for a season. But soul recognition does not obey pride. And your person is beginning to understand that what they tried to fight was not random. It was not weakness. It was not something they could replace with noise, company, or distraction. It was a signal. A signal that their heart had attached itself to something real. Now listen closely because this part is important. Their struggle last night was not only about missing you. It was about facing themselves. You became the doorway. Your memory became the lamp. Your absence became the silence where their truth could finally speak. And when that truth spoke, it brought guilt with it. Not the kind of guilt that destroys, the kind that awakens. They began to feel the weight of moments when they could have chosen softness but chose distance. When they could have clarified but stayed confusing. When they could have protected your heart but protected their pride. When they could have met your love with honesty but responded with hesitation. And for a guarded person, this realization can feel like standing before a mirror with no shadow to hide inside. They wanted to blame timing. They wanted to blame circumstances. They wanted to blame confusion. But the deeper part of them knew. They were afraid. Afraid of needing you. Afraid of being seen by you. Afraid of not being enough. Afraid that if they opened their heart fully, they would no longer be able to control how deeply you mattered. So they fought. They fought the pull. They fought the longing. They fought the memory. They fought the signs. But last night, something fought back. Not you, not anger, not pressure. Love. Love fought back quietly. Love stood in the room like a presence. Love reminded them that what is real does not disappear just because someone is scared. Love reminded them that some people are not easy to forget because they were never sent to be temporary. And then, my child, the most unexpected thing happened. They softened. Maybe only for a minute. Maybe no one saw it. Maybe they quickly hardened again. But heaven saw the minute. Heaven saw their eyes change. Heaven saw their breathing shift. Heaven saw the moment their heart stopped defending itself. In that small opening, they felt you. Not physically, spiritually. They felt the echo of your kindness. They felt the ache of your absence. They felt the truth that your connection carried more meaning than they wanted to admit. And in that moment, the battle inside them changed. It was no longer, how do I stop feeling this? It became, what am I supposed to do with this? That question is powerful because when a person stops asking how to escape love and starts asking what love requires, heaven begins preparing the next step. But do not misunderstand. This does not mean everything is easy. Now awakening is not the same as action. Realization is not the same as courage. A person can feel deeply and still hesitate. They can know the truth and still fear the consequence of speaking it. They can miss you and still wonder if you will reject them. They can want to return and still feel ashamed of how long it took them to understand. And yes, shame is part of what held them back last night. They did not only fight their feelings. They fought the shame attached to those feelings. Because admitting they still care means admitting they were not as detached as they acted. Admitting they miss you means admitting their silence was not peace. Admitting you matter means admitting they may have mishandled something sacred. And that is a heavy confession for the prideful heart. But the soul does not care about pride. The soul wants truth. The soul wants healing. The soul wants what brings it back to life. And their soul remembers how it felt when your energy was close. It remembers something their mind tries to debate. It remembers being understood without explaining everything. It remembers being drawn toward you even when the situation made no sense. It remembers feeling both exposed and comforted by your presence. That combination is rare. To be exposed and comforted at the same time, to be seen and still accepted. To be challenged and still safe. That is why they could not sleep easily in their own denial. That is why the night pressed on them. That is why their thoughts circled back to you after every attempt to move away. Because your connection touched a layer of them that casual people never reach. And once that layer is touched, the soul does not forget. Last night, they may have tried to convince themselves that you have moved on. They may have imagined you being happier without them. They may have wondered if someone else now has your attention. And that thought did something to them. It created urgency. Not the loud kind. The kind that makes the heart suddenly aware that time is not endless. They realize that silence has consequences. They realize that waiting too long can become losing. They realize that the person who once felt close can become unreachable if taken for granted. And for a moment fear turned into clarity. They saw that they cannot keep standing between desire and action forever. They cannot keep watching from the hidden places of their heart and expect the connection to remain unchanged. They cannot keep asking heaven for a sign while ignoring the signs already given. And my child, there have been signs more than they admitted. They have seen reminders of you in places they did not expect. They have heard words that sounded like messages. They have felt sudden emotional waves without reason. They have compared others to something they felt with you and found the comparison empty. They have looked for peace and found your memory waiting there. Heaven has been speaking not to force them but to awaken what fear put to sleep. And last night the signs gathered. It was as if every little reminder, every quiet ache, every unfinished thought, every unsent word came together and stood before them. They could not dismiss it as coincidence anymore. Something was asking them to pay attention. Something was calling them inward. Something was showing them that the connection they tried to minimize has been shaping them from the inside. And this is where the mystery deepens. Because while they were fighting their feelings, you were being protected from seeing the full battle too soon. Heaven did not allow you to witness every hidden tear, every restless thought, every almost message, every silent confession. Not because you are unworthy of knowing, but because heaven knows your heart. If you had seen too much too early, you might have run toward them before they were ready to stand in truth. You might have softened your boundaries before their courage matured. You might have mistaken their emotional storm for a completed transformation. So, heaven hid parts of the process. Heaven let the battle happen in secret. And last night was one of those secret battles. A battle between pride and longing. Between fear and truth, between the old self and the awakening soul, between what they wanted to deny and what they could no longer escape. You were not forgotten in that room. You were present in ways words cannot measure. Your name carried weight. Your energy carried memory. Your absence carried instruction. And your silence, if you have been silent, carried power. Because sometimes silence is not emptiness. Sometimes silence becomes a holy space where another person finally hears what your heart had been trying to say all along. They heard it last night. Not perfectly, not fully, but enough. Enough to disturb the lie. Enough to weaken the wall. Enough to make their heart ask why your presence still feels so close. Enough to make them wonder whether this connection is unfinished. And it is unfinished. But unfinished does not always mean immediate reunion. Sometimes unfinished means there is still truth to be spoken, still accountability to rise, still healing to happen, still courage to be born, still a divine turn that neither of you can see yet. And last night was part of that turn. It was not the whole answer. It was the shaking before the opening, the trembling before the message, the inward collapse before the outward movement. Your person tried to fight their feelings, but they did not win the way they thought they would. They may have gone to sleep without contacting you. They may have returned to their normal face today. They may still be acting as if nothing happened, but something did happen. A seed cracked, a truth rose, a wall weakened, a hidden part of them stepped forward and said, "I cannot keep denying this." And once that sentence is spoken inside the soul, it does not go back to sleep easily. Now the energy around them is different. They are more aware of what they feel, more aware of what they lost, more aware of what they risk losing, more aware that the heart has a memory stronger than the mind's excuses. And because of this, the next days may feel unusual. You may feel their energy before you hear their words. You may sense movement before anything appears. You may suddenly feel calm after confusion or emotional after feeling detached. You may feel as if something is approaching but cannot yet name it. That is because something is moving through the unseen, not chaotic, not fearful, measured, divine, quietly intense, like footsteps behind a closed door. And this is what heaven wants you to understand before part 1 ends. You are not being asked to chase. You are not being asked to beg. You are not being asked to lower your worth to receive someone's awakening. You are being asked to stay aligned with the truth of who you are. Because your person's feelings are not the only thing being tested. Their courage is being tested. Their honesty is being tested. Their willingness to step out of pride is being tested. And your patience, your self-respect, your spiritual steadiness are being strengthened. This connection is not just about whether they feel you. They do. It is about whether they can rise to the responsibility of feeling you. That is the part that determines what happens next. Because love without courage becomes silence. Longing without action becomes pain. Recognition without accountability becomes another cycle. And heaven is not preparing you for another cycle. Heaven is preparing you for clarity. That clarity may come as a message. It may come as a confession. It may come as a dream that reveals more than words can. It may come as a sudden shift in their behavior. It may come through an encounter, a sign, a moment so precise that you will know it was not random. But before that outward sign appears, the inward battle must reach its turning point. And last night it did. Not the final turning point, but the first one that matters, because they finally realized that fighting their feelings does not make them disappear. It only makes the truth louder. And now the truth is awake. There is still something they have not admitted even to themselves. Something deeper than missing you. Something connected to why they pulled away, why they hesitated, why your love scared them, and why last night became the moment their heart could no longer stay completely closed. Heaven saw the exact second it happened, the second their pride went silent, the second your name rose inside them, the second they understood that this was not over in the way they had tried to believe. And then, just before the night ended, something else entered the room with them. A sign, a pressure, a message, a feeling so strong that they froze. Because in that moment, they realized the next move may not be optional anymore.